Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Simply Cyber Live, the 1 hour long form podcast, live video podcast show where we bring on industry experts or industry well-informed individuals in order to share their knowledge and level all of us up and have a good time. Chat, what's up? It's good to see you. Today, we've got a really amazing individual. Some of you may recognize our guest, Garry Binder, from the Intel stream that we had about maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago. Garry and I hit it off in the green room before. We were talking about all sorts of amazing things. He is a knowledgeable individual, guys. And I said, I got to have you back on. We've got to talk quantum cryptography. There's a million things that I don't know. And there's a lot of things that I assume, like for example, do we need to get Windows Quantum OS next? Apparently that's not that's a very stick my head in the sand kind of question. And Garry's going to answer them all. So standard rules apply, guys. Feel free to launch questions into chat. Garry's going to answer as many as he possibly can. He's excited. I'm excited. I hope you are too. Let me go get Garry. We're going to have a heck of a good time today. Hey, Garry, what's cracking, bud?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going awesome. Really quick, Garry, I don't know if you know, but I want to say hi to Kimberly and Steph and Rich464, Terrence Billingsley, Slava, so many squad members. People turned out for you today, Garry.
Good. Excellent.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So last time you were here, we didn't get to talk about quantum on stream, but I want to talk all about it. So let me just kind of preface this right up front. So when I hear quantum cryptography, I'm like, oh, it's qubits. Like a modern computer is binary, zeros and ones. And we all agree, right? That's 64-bit. It's just they added an extra thing. Oh, whole Cyber Human Initiative doing squad memberships.
We just become best friends. Yep.
Right off the rip, Garry. People are loving it. They're throwing squad memberships around. Thanks so much, whole Cyber Human Initiative. So when I say that, and it's like, oh, quantum is just a third bit. So it's going to scale out of control because instead of powers of 2, it's powers of 3. So can you, for me, please, and I'm going to say for chat, but really for me, can you please simplify, like I'm 5, explain to me what quantum computing is going to be and how quantum cryptography plays a part in it?
Yeah. Okay. So I think we all know about classical physics, right? There was a guy, he's late 1600s. His last name was Newton. He's sitting under an apple tree, right? And all of a sudden, and I make part of this up because I don't know exactly what happened, but all of a sudden this apple, comes loose and it starts heading towards him. And at the very beginning, it's barely moving, but it goes faster and faster until it hits him on the head. And it's moving pretty quick at that point. And it hurts actually. And it moves his head a little bit and it, dents it just slightly momentarily and it bounces off and he says whatever they said back then. And that's classical physics, right? I am only, affected by things that are right next to me or things that hit me. And with quantum mechanics, you throw all of that out. None of that. I mean, some of it's valid, but to a large degree, we don't do that kind of stuff anymore, right? It's just things can interact with other things at great distances, and back to the what's a qubit? Well, a qubit is kind of like you've heard the term superposition, right? It's not a 1, it's not a 0, it's kind of some of both at the same time, and this is where you get, everyone's heard Schrodinger's cat, right? Is this, you don't really know, it's in both positions until you check it. And then you find out whether the cat's alive or dead, right? And it's kind of, before that, it's both, right? Which is weird, but
very weird. Yes.
Everything about classical physics, and let's go with, quantum physics is very different, right?
Yeah, 100%. So when it's funny. So when I think of quantum cryptography, so first of all, when I hear quantum cryptography, what I'm hearing is it is cryptography math, basically, that can be used for encryption, but it's being done on a quantum computer. So to me, that's like the ham and cheese on the bread, but the bread is quantum computing, right? You need the quantum computing foundation before you do quantum cryptography on top of it. You can't leverage the power of those computers to do the crazy encryption unless you built the computer. So when we talk quantum cryptography, do we have to first be talking about and understand quantum computing?
Yeah. So, so there's a couple of things going on, and the first one is what we call post-quantum cryptography, and this is what. Let's imagine that quantum computers are up and running and they're doing everything we dreamed they were going to do, and they just work great. And what does that do to cryptography as we know it today? And that it's quite impactful. If assuming that we reach that point, it's quite impactful, and all of the algorithms that we know and love, RSA, elliptic curve, all this good stuff, is just like, hey, our perspective on all of that stuff changes. And then there's a whole nother field, which, we can follow up and we could talk about this at some point as well. But there's this whole other field, which is, okay, now I have two quantum computers and I want to talk, between them, and how do I do that in a way that, that is safe and secure, and so the cryptography that, exists between those two. But the bigger or more immediate kind of concern, I think, for everybody is probably around, and people talk about this. What's the crypto-apocalypse, right? This is the, I'm nervous. I'm going to wake up one morning and the headlines are going to be somebody invented, maybe it's Jerry, somebody invented a quantum computer and they're able to crack every encryption that has ever been done, and instantly, and those sorts of things. And that's what everyone's kind of, and you see this in the news pretty often, is this is the thing, right, that people are stressed about. So,
well, I mean, is that really a fictitious kind of fear, uncertainty, doubt scenario, or is that real? Because I mean, on the surface, it sounds like I've got a powerful computer that can do way more powerful math. Your timelines of how long it would take to crack this no longer apply because I'm using a different tool that wasn't measured.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So there's some reality in, and I think we have enough. We have some small quantum computers that are, doing dozens of qubits and these sorts of things, and able to manipulate, and they're able to do some very basic, factoring of composite numbers and those sorts. So we understand the concept. We proved the concept. It works. It's the scale that we don't have, and so there is a point in time, and we've all kind of agreed as security professionals, there's a point in time where we've agreed that, hey, let's get ready for this, and we think 2030 is a good deadline when we should have all of our algorithms up to a certain strength, the existing algorithms, to try to, quote, delay, if you will, this risk that everything could be decrypted. My personal opinion, and there was a seminar I was watching where somebody, the question to the panel was, hey, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
Right. And one of the individuals said, quantum computers, that keeps me up at night, because they're going to be able to, first of all, security professionals get a good night's sleep. That's the, that's the rule. Just don't let stuff, because if you wake up and you're tired, you're no good to anyone. So we need everybody to be well rested. But in addition to that, it's less likely to be a sudden event where you wake up and we went from, dozens of qubits to millions of qubits, in coherence overnight. And all of a sudden, everything's, has been cracked. It's more likely that over time we're going to say, oh, you know what, this company, surpassed this level, and this company surpassed that level, and then we went to this company, and they're up to hundreds, now they're up to thousands, and so forth and so on.
Well, I mean, we've heard rumors that nation states, I'm not going to name any because I'm sure all of the first world powers are wholesale stockpiling encrypted data for that day to come. Would it be fair to say that as you're talking, Garry, like my thoughts go to, what's new is, or what's old is new again. Like if you look at the internet, the way it started, right? The 60s, it was basically like SRI, RAND, UCal, Berkeley, like only the top end research centers in the US government had mainframes and computers. And then it became more accessible, more mainstream, et cetera, et cetera. Like, is quantum computing probably going to follow that same workflow?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the we're going to record a bunch of data and then someday we're going to be able to decrypt it. And this is already, you're right, this has already happened once before, which is if I had recorded some of the initial RC4 40-bit encryption streams or DES, original DES, you can crack those on your laptop today, right? That's and if there were anything interesting in them, maybe we would do that. I'm not sure that there is, right? But and this is why we change our passwords periodically, right? So the password that I used, back in 1994 is now, I don't use that anymore.
You would hope, although we see stories every day.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, things tend to repeat themselves, and this is the risk, right? This is, or the threat, if you will, is just that there's we're recording everything as much as we can. Someday we're going to be able to decrypt it, and the theory is that to a large degree maybe none of this stuff is interesting by the time we get there, or less of it is interesting. So.
But I mean, as far as like accessibility to quantum computers, like Best Buy is not going to have a quantum laptop anytime soon, right? Like I'm not going to be getting one for Christmas in 2035. Like iPad 45 quantum.
Yeah, this is the today, and what's interesting is I did this a few years ago. Is this IBM made their 5-qubit quantum computer available online. You just sign up for an account. And I did this, and you can do some they call scoring or whatever. Is this do this, do that. Did I know what I was doing? Not really, but I went through it and I ran it, and it ran the thing like 1,000 times, gave me the results, and said most of the time it did this, and there's error, there's noise, and then they had pictures, and these pictures are still valid. Is they run these quantum computers at near absolute zero, and even the ones that they consider warm are a fraction of a degree above above
oh wow
above absolute zero. So if you're going to get one, you got to have room in your garage. As my son told me this morning, you got to have room in your garage for the whole huge 55-gallon sized drums of coolant and all this good stuff, right? You're not gonna, or somebody, as people claim from time to time, hey, I came up with a room temperature quantum computer. Okay, interesting. Let's see it. Well, I left it.
It's in my other pants.
Yeah, I left it at the gym this morning. Whatever, right? Yeah. So. Yeah.
So I mean, so is the long pole in the tent right now for quantum computing, not even at wholesale, but just like nation states having legitimate, not weapon capability, but like, advanced technology that's a difference maker. Is the challenge the cooling?
Well, it's one of them, right? But the cooling itself really explains the fragile nature of quantum computing. It is one of the sources of, one of the main sources of noise in the system. And so if I get, a bunch of qubits and they're entangled, and they kind of, they all work together. And if one of them, collapses, they all collapse. Or and so noise, is one of the key things. And so, yeah, you got to have a cold, as cold as you can get. You have to protect it from all kinds of, electromagnetic interference and all this stuff. And so, as we understand, quantum computers today, you're not going to go to Best Buy and get one. Mm-hmm. Somebody's gonna, there's a lot of smart people out there. They're looking for breakthroughs and they're finding stuff. Are they going to get one, that makes them available at Best Buy? Maybe. I wouldn't hold your breath for that laptop. But
so I want to pull up a picture of quantum computing that you have in your slide deck here in a second, slide 3. But I wanted to ask you, like, for the people who are working in quantum right now, are they more like architecture, technology, hardware architects, or are they mathematicians?
Well, my expectation is in limited exposure is you've got some of both, right? Okay. And so it's a new field, right? And it's awesome to see at times some young people come up with new things that are like, hey, have you thought about this? And we're like, us old guys are like, no, we didn't think of that because we've been thinking about things this way our whole lives, and we can't actually think properly in
Yeah,
that
you've
way,
almost been
right?
kind of pushed into a paradigm, not like
Right,
almost unconscious bias of how you approach
right,
things.
right, right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's the other thing that, as these new technologies kind of come and mature, it's a great opportunity for folks who are not contaminated like we are, with the way things work. And we're like, well,
Contaminated, Gary. I like to think of myself as seasoned.
seasoned, yeah, but I'm like, hey, when the apple falls, it's gonna hit me on, as opposed to whatever it does in the quantum world, right?
Right, right. It enters a wormhole or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me pull this up really quickly. Gary provided this in advance. This is what are we looking at, Gary?
Well, these are press images that were published by IBM and Google, and I like the IBM one because it's big enough to actually see. But you can actually see, they've got these 7 areas kind of spread throughout the chip, and sometimes these are referred to as traps. This is where I capture my quantum, my particle, right? And they exist in this. And what's interesting about this is like, well, that thing that they made, whether it's silicon or, and there's some companies working in that space, whatever that happens, well, why can't I just add more of those? It's 7 there, but how come I can't make 7,000? Well, okay. But then it's a matter of, okay, how do I get, all the quantum particles in there entangled the way I want them, and then keep them from getting, impacted by, by heat or other, electromagnetic, fields or interference or what have you. And so yeah, so these are what we would consider early, artifacts. And Google,
CJ wants you to throw thermal paste on it, Gary. Just a big splooge
to
of thermal
cool it.
paste.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's the right way to, obviously, the answer.
So I mean, again, like just trying to understand where the research is currently. Are what we looking at right here kind of the current state of like maximum capability? Because you said they can't scale it up necessarily because of all the particle entanglements and such. How are they, like, where's the research? What's the challenge they're trying to solve right now?
Well, there's been a number of announcements that come out. Actually, some I get them weekly. Where there's material that comes out. There's another slide. If you go up to number 6, this is kind of and IBM has kind of aggressively moved into, with the press releases that they've made and so forth. They've kind of moved into an assertive position, if you will, on, hey, we think we can reach, this particular level in this particular time. And so what you'll see there is kind of IBM, their roadmap. You've got an exponential, graph here, and what they're showing is hey, today, what are we at? 100 and some odd, qubits. We're going to move to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and eventually, hey, we're going to crack RSA 2048 in 8 hours, and we think we're going to need, at least this is the consensus, about 20 million qubits. A quantum computer with about 20 million qubits in order to do that, and they've got to, and not only do I need to have them, in a fairly peaceful or serene environment. But if something happens during the processing, I may have to back up and start over or what have you. And so those are the kinds of, but this is what IBM is, they're thinking, hey, we think we're going to be at a certain position in a certain period of time.
Yeah.
Of course, Google is doing work, Microsoft, Intel, there's a bunch of companies that are doing work in this space, but this is one of the more aggressive kind of timelines that I've found. This particular paper that is cited here is they're also citing Moore's law. Of course, Moore's law was made or was written, with classical computing in mind. This is how many transistors, these transistors double every couple of years or every year or something like that. And so there's a couple of lines on there that if you did apply, this to something that it wasn't really envisioned for, here's the line you would get. But the kind of the two lines there, the IBM line, and then the one next to it, the solid black line, is this is where the general consensus is 2036. Maybe we should be able to do this, crack a 2048-bit RSA, key certificate in about 8 hours. Will it happen? We'll find out.
Well, and even if it does, NIST, for those who don't know NIST, and by the way, squad members, Gary, I don't know if you know this because it definitely didn't come up in our talk. There's an I Heart NIST emote for squad members. We're very proud of it. I love it. NIST is already working and has, if I'm not mistaken, they've narrowed it down to four algorithms. Maybe they've already selected it. I don't follow it that closely. But by the time 2036, 2038 rolls around, we should have quantum resistant algorithms in place, right? I mean, is that the kind of general consensus of the community?
Yeah. Yeah. So this algorithm business takes some time, obviously. And, RSA, which is kind of our workhorse, algorithm, primarily because it's been, around the longest. Actually, the original paper, and I have it on my desk here somewhere, but the original paper came out in 1977, right? So this is before, a lot of us were ready for that kind of technology, right? And and it's been, it's stood the test of time. Here we are at 2023, and so far it's still holding up really, really well, right? And this thing gets attacked all the time. Is people are like, I have this new idea, I'm going to do this, and so the process of coming up with a new suite of algorithms that are kind of quantum resistant, if you will, is a lengthy one, and it's one that they've been on for quite some time. So NIST has said that sometime next year they're going to finalize the parameters of those algorithms that you mentioned. And so so they picked a number of algorithms, and there's and they're working on the parameters. Well, what does that mean? It's just like, well, you talk about RSA 1024. That's where where we were a number of years ago. Now we're at 2048. These are parameters. Now we're moving to, well, you should really have 3072 bits on your key, and well, maybe just jump ahead to 4096 bits. Every time you do that, it takes a little longer for your computer to process the decryptions or the encryptions and those sorts of things. But they're working on parameters right now for these algorithms that you mentioned, and so they've said that they plan, and stuff happens, but they plan to have these finalized in 2024.
You ready for some questions from chat?
I'm ready for some questions. Chat
has been fierce today, and I got to tell you, CJ particularly is very interested in this talk. We'll start with a question from CJ. Is quantum computing use elliptical curve concept still, or is it built on a new theory? I mean, that's already deeper than my brain can wrap around. So that's there fair. You go.
That's fair. So quantum computing in general quantum computers are really good at solving what we would consider, linear problems, linear equations, and the reason why it can do those sorts of things is because it can do a lot concurrently, a lot at the same time. So quantum computing is an elliptic curve cryptography. So this is ECC. This is something that is a little bit newer, but still, fairly mature and used very, very pervasively out there. Elliptic curve is something that if you, have a sufficiently sized quantum computer, you can also break down and crack elliptic curve, keys. And so it's just one of many things that quantum computers can do. But it is one of the things that NIST is, deprecating. By the way, I think NIST is just, and you and I talked about this last time, Jerry, after the show, NIST just does a fantastic job with things, the work that they did with AES, and the standardization there has just been fantastic. And there's always disagreements, right? Is between the folks who work there and the folks who who are kind of keeping an eye on them, right? There were some mistakes made years ago, and so trust is one of those things you just got to continue to build over time, and they're doing a great job. I got the privilege of speaking at a conference sponsored by NIST a few years ago, probably 5-6 years ago. And I walked into this room and they had a list of all the attendees, and there were 50 of us in there, and 49 of us had PhDs, and the rest of us did not. And they're just super, just super nice bunch of people. They, everyone I talked to is just like, you could tell they just meant the best. They wanted the best for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, I love NIST, not to digress too much, but in the last, I'd say 10 years, I've seen it numerous times. They're huge on workshops, community workshops for practitioners to come in and weigh in, and they're receptive to that. So instead of trying to like be in an ivory tower and define standards and what, they're literally iterating based on best practices and what industry is seeing. So we got 2 questions coming in. I knew it wouldn't take long for this to happen. I'm going to bring up one and then I'll swap to the second one because they're very related. But I want to give shout outs. So Whole Cyber Human Initiative said, what are your thoughts around quantum apocalypse and new robust AIs in the mix? And then Just Ben with a smaller question, has AI played any part in quantum? So let's pull the Band-Aid off, Gary. What's going on with AI quantum?
So there's a bunch going on. In fact, a friend of mine pinged me on LinkedIn after I posted this event yesterday and said, hey, Q-Star basically is cracking encryption already, and so he was joking. But there is. So I have seen some papers, and they do exist where. I have used AI techniques. People have used AI techniques to help analyze side channel information, for example. And this is like, hey, I see timing coming off of my TPM or out of my electronic circuits that are doing encryption, and I used an AI technique to break those down and actually help me get to the key. And that people have been successful doing that up until now. Why we say that, right? Up until now, there hasn't been an AI that I have seen or anyone else that I know of has seen where you can basically just give it an encrypted, or a public key or an encrypted stream and say, decrypt this, and it will say, give me a second. Okay, here you go. Right? I haven't seen that, right? Will it happen? Yesterday earlier in the week, I was giving ChatGPT a bunch of math questions, and I was getting them wrong one after the next. And so I was like, there's work to do here before AI is going to, or at least general artificial intelligence is going to be able to just help out. But yeah, some very specific applications of AI have been successful in helping analyze these side channel, differential power analysis, right, timing attacks, these sorts of things. So
when you say giving ChatGPT math problems, and you don't have to go into deep detail because I won't know, but I mean, are you asking it? And I'm being hyperbolic to make the point, but like, are you saying what's 3 to the 5th power, or are you saying solve this unsolved math theory, like something from Good Will Hunting?
I am not giving it unsolvable problems. I'm giving it very solvable problems.
Okay.
And to a large degree, they're word problems because ChatGPT is a chatbot, and so. But I've been giving it some word problems that are 5th, 6th grade kind of level, and it's struggling with those. And this is not I didn't discover this. This is known, right? In fact, it's published. Hey, we don't have it hooked up to a computational engine of any sort.
It's just scraping the internet basically and doing LLMs on the internet, right?
Right.
Which, by the way, is kind of hilarious. Not to go down a downward spiral, which it most certainly would be of AI conversations, but like a lot of the content pumping out onto the internet right now was generated by ChatGPT. So if you're building the models for ChatGPT 5, 6, 7, 8 on the content on the internet, it's going to be built on its own content. Like at some point, you have diminishing returns on the model. But I digress.
No, I mean, you're exactly right. And what has to happen there is that you have to very carefully curate what you feed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we already know this, right? Because you've garbage in, garbage out. This has been an axiom for forever, right? So
you had talked earlier about these heats and keeping them at 0 Kelvin. Which is that even possible? Can we?
Well, it's not. It's one of those things where getting something to absolute zero takes an infinite amount of power.
Okay. Well, I was just, as you said it, I was like, wait a minute. Like it dawned on me that was something I remember from like 11th grade physics. Okay.
This is what, and I by the way, we also talk about zero trust, right? And so I always throw out, well, what about absolute zero trust? Well, it takes an infinite amount of effort to get there. Right?
True. So, all right.
Same thing. Yeah.
Touche, sir. Touche. So just can you kind of like throw out for CJ here, like what kind of heat is this thing pumping off? Like if I had a quantum computer in my garage at 50 degrees, it's not South Dakota. It's cool here in the low country, but it's bearable. If it was 50 degrees and I turned on a quantum computer, would like my house immolate?
Well, the heat basically is coming from the fact that the container in which I house the quantum circuits has to go way down, and then we've got to take all the heat out, right? So I'm going to plead uncle on that one and basically say, hey, everyone is doing this in a very large building, with lots of ventilation, and all that heat that's coming out of the system is carefully pumped outside, and so probably won't end up doing it in your house anytime real soon. So
I like it. We've got all sorts of questions coming in. I'll just do one more that just came in, but it's temperature related. Meta's Oregon facility operates as far as temp and server farm. I don't know how this question. Do you know anything about Meta's Oregon facility? I'm confused by the question.
So the only one I remember hearing a number of years ago, and this is the I don't speak for my employer conversation. The only one I heard of years ago was there was some creation of a data center up the Columbia a little ways or something in that area, and they were using power from the hydroelectric and what have you. And so I don't know anything specific about kind of how much it whether I'm even right in remembering that or how much it puts out or anything like that.
Yeah, no problem. So taking it to a cyber perspective, Gigi wants to know, what are some of the vulnerabilities and limitations of quantum crypto that people are talking about today?
Right. Yeah. Hey, this is a good opportunity to look at. Let's look at slide 8. I think this one is I think this is a good one, right? Because so we've got what people are focusing on, to a large degree, and have been for a number of years, is hey, I've got a couple of algorithms that are really pervasive out there, and without these algorithms working effectively and protecting all the data that comes right behind, we've got a problem. And these algorithms are RSA, and elliptic curve was already mentioned earlier, and Diffie-Hellman. These are these algorithms that that all fall on this right in the crosshairs of a lot of the quantum research that's going on right now and developments going on. And by the way, quantum computers have the good news is that they have other things to do, even if we go eliminate all this this use case, which is go crack these algorithms, right? There's plenty of other things for them to work on, so don't feel bad for them. But there's this complexity spectrum where at the bottom you have these things that are algorithms that are polynomial time. Right above them you have this section where you have the what we call the bounded error quantum polynomial time. And this is where RSA and elliptic curve and Diffie-Hellman sit. You got NP complete. Anyone ever done Sudoku? That's an NP complete problem. And then you go up, you've got even harder problems, right? And we break these algorithms down and we say, hey, this is what it takes to to run these algorithms. And so, but the ones that are really in the crosshairs are really the ones that I've listed here. And there's a few others. There's people that are looking, hey, is there a way to to go after some of the symmetric encryption algorithms or not? And if and there's some work that's and some progress that's been made there, but these are the ones that people are pretty most nervous about, so to speak. So
oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, P not equal to NP or P equals NP is, I mean, that's like one of the classical kind of math algorithms. Yeah.
There's $1 million on the table, by the way, for anyone listening or anyone out there who can prove or disprove the P equal NP problem, right? And it's worth a few minutes of your time, perhaps, just to decide whether you want to work on that or not. But
yeah, and there's probably a lot of research already done on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, questions are coming in hot and heavy, Gary, for you guys. I mean, for you. So James Randolph wants to know, aren't we essentially using the calculation of multiple quantum bits and comparing them because they're prone to error? So are we not going all out? We're actually kind of using a division of the quantum computing to do parallel processing to fact check each other.
Yeah, so quantum computing, just does a tremendous amount of work in parallel, right? And that is that is its advantage, right? And to some degree, without that advantage, it would be far less interesting. And it's not so much, while there is some opportunity there, it's not so much for dividing up the workload, at least comparing. It's not a voting system, so to speak. It's more of a, hey, we get all the bits together, and they come up with a particular solution. Now, the way we try to deal with noise in these systems is we'll rerun when we detect that there's been a problem or that that it's been noisy, we'll rerun, right? And that's just I talked about this earlier with the IBM computer that they made available online. They ran this score like 1,000 times and then gave me the results, right? And a good share of them all matched, and then there were some that were kind of off in the weeds, right? And so that's to a large degree, that's how you, or at least at the time, that was how we got the results that indicated how they were dealing with the noise problem. So
all right, so it's much less like the way that the space shuttle in 1969, how it had three computers doing the same. Have you ever heard that I guess theory or myth, or I guess it's a myth. Essentially, for those out there, I've heard this myth that the original space shuttle, the Apollo shuttle, a rocket, whatever you want to call it, they sent three computers, and all three would calculate the same thing, and it would go with whatever two of them agreed on.
Right. That particular practice is not uncommon even today in a variety of different systems. And the last time I encountered it was in a kind of a failover redundancy type model. This is where you had three machines that were all responsible for something, but they were all kind of environments where they may lose connectivity, or and so this voting capability, whether it's 3 or 5 or 7 or 9, whatever it happens to be, this voting kind of approach is still used in many different industries, including aerospace today.
Interesting. So, I did not know that. I thought that was like a one-off 1960s, like, oh, we're going to the moon, like no matter what, let's go. I didn't realize that was like standard practice in a lot of instances.
Well, when you get out into space, and this is interesting, when you get out into space, you don't have the protections that the atmosphere gives for us, right? It's just for radiation and a variety of other things, and so much more likely to have cosmic rays, high energy particles, whatever it happens to be, get into your. In fact, I think recently Voyager suffered, from this as well, one of the two. But impact the operations of the system, and you've got to be able to have necessary redundancy or fall back to a previous state and start again or whatever in order to deal with this. And by the way, that's not so different, at least in philosophically, than what we have to do with in quantum computers, right? There's whether it's noise, generated by heat or whether you're out in space. I mean, you have to be able to deal with those sorts of things, and what you described was a good way of handling it so that one particular event doesn't take your whole mission out.
Yeah,
So,
like throw more resources at it, more money, more tech. Yeah, I like it. If I went out in space and got irradiated, I was hoping for like a superpower, but I'd probably just get sick and be miserable.
Yeah. The odds of getting it's not zero, right? The odds of getting a superpower, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, you're more likely to get something you don't want
Exactly.
than something you do want.
That's right.
Let's turn the conversation a little bit here. I like the direction that chat is going here. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, the future. So, like I said earlier, I think that research facilities that are basically federally funded, whether it's US federal or China federal or Russia federal, whatever, first world countries that have the energy resources and the Maslow's pyramid of needs, that they're not worried about feeding themselves. They're worried about, tech and world power. Like realistically, when do Chris put nation state hackers, but let's think like national security directives and Department of Defenses for first world powers. How long until quantum computing is folded into their portfolio?
So what you're talking about is what we refer to as the good bad guys, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And how long before? Well, there's good and bad news. The good news is that you probably won't know, because it's not going to show up on the budget that's produced and released for public consumption and those sorts of things. So you're not going to see, regardless of what country it is, you're not necessarily going to see, hey, we invested X number of millions or billions of dollars in buying a quantum computer, right? However, the interests that these organizations have dictate that they pursue the latest technologies in order to do what they're chartered to do, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm just gonna say I have nothing to base this on. I have no clearance, no experience, which is good. If your government, regardless of what country you're from, doesn't already have a quantum computer that they're working with, I'd be shocked.
Okay, there you go.
So, and maybe they don't necessarily have one that's phenomenally better than what you see in the news, but they've got one, and they're, working on, all the interfaces to it. And here's how I submit a problem to it. And hey, next year we're going to get the next model. We're going to get the 2024 edition of the quantum computer.
Yeah.
It's going to be better.
It's going to have a turbo button on it.
That's right. And we're going to run a lot faster. And the year after that, wow, look out.
Watch out. Yeah. Do you remember that, Gary, going way back, the Hewlett-Packards, the 386, 486s, it had a turbo button?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it was, and it makes you, and yeah, they did put out a little more heat when you do that, but I think it, what was it, get you up to 25 megahertz or something like that.
25 was standard, 33 was the turbo button.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but I just ran it wide open with turbo all the time.
And why wouldn't you? I mean, this is you paid a lot of money for those things, so just run.
I love it. I love it. So continuing on, because you mentioned, you'd be surprised if first world powers didn't already have it. Demetrius wants to know, like, when are the professional roles? When's the workforce demand coming out for quantum computer engineers?
I'm reminded of the IBM CEO, chairman, whatever it was, way back, who said something like, I can imagine there being a worldwide need for maybe 3 or 4 of these computers, and he was talking about the the original digital computers, well, he might have been surprised, by the quantity that we have today. And so I feel like we're kind of, to some degree, we're back in that, in that same phase, and we're going to do it all over again, as you said before, Jerry. So, I think we're, by the way, future's bright. If you're interested in quantum computing, absolutely go work on it, because it's a growing field. Like I said, even though we're going to pivot all of our algorithms away to something that's more quantum resistant, more secure, there's plenty of other use cases. Chemistry is a big one. Plenty of other use case, finance, for quantum computers, and we're just, we're still waiting for our I hate to say Bill Gates or Alan Turing or any of these, there's some real brilliant folks out there who've done some fantastic work. There's so much more space for other folks to jump in and participate in this, in this wave that's coming.
Yeah, I love it and agree. I went all the way up to multivariable calculus, but that doesn't mean I enjoyed it. So I think I'm going to stay the course with cybersecurity and just kind of hope that I can retire before quantum becomes a thing that I gotta sweat on. So again, sticking kind of with this forward-facing look, Gigi had a question. Again, this is Garry Binder's take. Citizen Garry Binder. When you think about ethical or societal impacts of widespread adoption, so it's 2050, and quantum is as ubiquitous as it could be at 2050. Where does your mind go? Where does science fiction author Garry Binder go?
Right. This one, you could spend a lot of time thinking about this. We could spend a lot of time talking about this. I think there's some real key opportunities. I have looked actually hey, what if I applied, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is this AI. What if we applied quantum computers in the AI space? And this is actually not AI to crack cryptography. This is more of a, hey, what if we came up with a way to accelerate AI using quantum computers? And anyone who, by the way, AI is expensive to operate. Almost, a lot of the most advanced algorithms run in the cloud, and there's a reason. They're big, they're unwieldy, they take a lot of power. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. To a large degree, what I found is that a lot of people either don't know or don't agree yet on how quantum computing is going to help AI. There's always going to be the need to keep secrets, and so that's a great area to get into and to stay up to date on. And so I think societal impacts, you can't miss it. You go online for like 5 seconds and you're like, well, TikTok is doing this and Twitter's doing that, and and this untruth is spreading like wildfire, and this the challenges that we're going to face going forward are not the same challenges that we faced before. They're much harder, they're much more complicated, and they involve people and the interface between people and computing, and it's going to get even more involved and more impactful as time goes on.
Do you, as a follow-up question, do you feel, because like right now, countries that don't have computers, right? Like when computers came around and became more mainstream, like in the 70s, like there became, it's like a digital divide, right? Like there became this like gap that got wider and wider with people who had access to it and countries that had access and those that did not. Again, this is kind of just like talking at the bar with beers, but like, do you feel that quantum computing is going to be that substantial that if there'll be a divide between those with it and those without it, even with access to computers and general AI?
Yes, perhaps a little more slowly, just because of the pace at which advances in quantum computing have moved up until now. And you never know, tomorrow you wake up and it's all different. But yeah, those, probably start with those corporations and those governments which have, and those which don't, right? And the divide there. And I think it will, ultimately, will it ever be something that you that you put in your pocket? Maybe, but by the looks of it at this point, today's technology, no, it's not going to fit in your pocket. But yeah, those who benefit from it, though, and those who can't benefit from it, I think will continue. There will be a divide, and obviously, those who are in this space, hopefully are cognizant of the societal and economic impacts of either creating that divide or maintaining that divide, and then ultimately breaking down that divide and how that can benefit society.
So if not divided, then connected. So as a follow-up, Matthew Hibbert, who, by the way, just real quick shout out, Garry, because I know you don't follow the community day to day, but Matthew was accidentally put in Simply Cyber jail. Sorry, Matthew. And he was unable to chat, and he was unable to engage with the community for a couple weeks due to a snafu. I still don't know how it happened. So Matthew's back.
Quantum computer qubit noise in the quantum computer, no doubt, is what caused it.
Yes, Matthew, it was the qubits that did it. So direct your angst towards them, but let's give him a squad membership sound effect. Matthew, thanks for being back, and I'm glad that you have the opportunity to chat now, because you can ask these questions of Garry. So when we're talking quantum computers and quantum computing and post-quantum cryptography, it's all single endpoint, right? It's the DOS of 1985 versus Unix and Multics of the 1970s. So how will standard? Are we looking at IPv4 or what? How are quantum computers speaking to each other, or is there no communication right now? Is that not even part of the scene?
No, there's some work going on, in this space about, communicating in a very, very secure manner, in that, I can actually tell through entanglement whether my communication is being monitored or not, right? Which is actually something we don't have today in the digital world. If somebody goes and starts listening to your packets and is able to decrypt those, that's something that you may never know is happening, right? But there's work going on in this space, and it's been going on for quite some time, actually. And this is somewhat quantum communication, actually.
Yeah, man, that sounds like science fiction. What do you can you elaborate a little bit? Because just to preface, in my world, or in our world, you also live in my world. I've heard of monitoring the energy pulsing on an electrical cord. A group out of University of Michigan did some work in the healthcare space on this, and they were able to tell if a machine was infected because of basically the pulsing was different. Are you talking about monitoring that way, or how could you know that I was eavesdropping on a conversation in the middle of the transmission between two endpoints?
Right. This is a good one, right? This is back to the very beginning, where we said quantum world is not like the classical world.
Yeah.
And
I'm broken. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you entangle a couple of qubits, right? And you send one down the wire, and if somebody tries to read it, it changes the state, of the one that you've got, presumably somehow hung on to. And so that, even though, and this has been demonstrated over, many, many kilometers, where, mess with one over here and this one over here is able to tell, right? It's very crazy stuff. So
what? I'm sorry. So are you? My brain hurts, man. Are we talking IPv4, like TCP/IP network, or how is it connecting? What are we talking about? Are we?
You're talking about individual photons that are traveling from point to point, and this is actually at layer 0 in the in the 7-layer model, right? This is the bottom layer, the medium in which you're communicating. So
Garry, like this is me right now. Like I am losing my mind about what you're talking about right now, dude. It's
yeah.
I can't. So it's just retire IPv4, retire TCP/IP, retire OSI, like go back to school, start over.
No. That's all that's all good stuff. IPv6 is going to be around for a really long time.
Yeah, IPv6 is right around the corner. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And even if you have this quantum communication stuff, you may choose to run IP over the top of it anyway, right? And it'll just be more secure than what you may get using Ethernet cables.
What kind of I'm sorry to be all over the place, guys, but I'm asking your questions too, but like this, you have derailed my train, Garry. Like I've just gone like 100 miles an hour and taken a right turn, and the train just kept going straight. So what kind of, is it an appropriate question to ask, like what kind of processor power are current quantum computers doing? Is that a question?
It's a good question, yeah. And actually, so this could be an exercise for the readers as well, as to go research quantum supremacy.
Okay.
So quantum supremacy is described as the point at which a quantum computer can do things that a classical computer can no longer do, because it has so much greater computational capacity. So back in 2019, Google had written a paper and announced, hey, we have achieved quantum supremacy. Our quantum computer has solved a problem that would take hundreds of thousands of years on a classical computer to solve. They had to kind of answer some hard questions about their claim, and some people say they had to walk it back a little bit. Hey, it's unnecessary to worry about that. But the reality is we are right there where a quantum computer is going to be able to do things that can't be done on classical computers. And actually, you get back to the RSA 2048 question, right? Is this, when will that happen? So, using the best methods and the best technology that we have today, cracking RSA 2048 is estimated to take literally trillions of years, right?
Okay.
But again, we have all these experts who are saying, hey, within 13, 15 years, whatever it happens to be, we think a quantum computer will be able to do it in about 8 hours. So compare those two, right? That's the crossover, and that's what quantum computers, the acceleration that you'll get. And the really exciting ones are not so much that I cracked RSA 2048, but that I'm able to go use this to solve some real challenging chemistry problems that could potentially change healthcare for everybody, right? That's where
yeah, that would be great. Like like have AI, instead of it trying to like make a like a get rich quick business, like solve cancer, or
Sure.
Quantum computing help with that too.
Right.
Wow. Oh man. So we're getting close to time, but what I wanted to ask you as we kind of close out, and a couple people mentioned this in chat. So whether it's learning more about the PNP problem, some people you caught their ear about the challenge, the financial win challenge. But as somebody who, obviously, Garry, you're very deep into this space, but imagine that myself and the other 100 people that are here are interested in this, but don't know where to start. Like, is there like a primer? Is there a good resource? Like, what would you recommend we go do?
I think everyone would hate me if I said go to ChatGPT and ask.
Yes.
That's not the right. And I would hate myself, frankly, if I said that. So there is some fantastic information out there. We mentioned NIST. NIST has some fantastic information on some of these, on these problems. There's a number of research papers. And there's some really good basic, stuff available too. But I, start on the internet and say, hey, P, equals NP, and you're going to get, a lot of great information just right out of that.
Is there a particular like leaders in the quantum computing, quantum crypto space? Like, oh, like everybody knows Michio Kaku, or like, I mean, is there someone that you like or you recommend?
I read a lot of material, and there are some companies who are who are leaders in this space, and so a lot of the there's academia where there's a lot of folks who are working in this, and then there's corporations who work and in many cases partner with them and so forth, and so I showed a couple of them. Intel has an active quantum program, IBM, Google, Microsoft. There's a bunch of others, frankly, that have active, material, and they produce a tremendous amount of really good material. Put it right on their websites, free, free for download, reading, all that good stuff. Same thing with several universities, and so, there's some crackpots out there too. So keep your
you got to look out for that.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that. So.
I'm sorry. Like, I know we were going to wrap up, but you mentioned crackpots. A couple years ago, 2019, DEF CON. I don't know if you know about this, but there was a company called Crown Sterling that had claimed that they had cracked. I want to say RSA, not 2048, but like, or AES 256, I think they claimed. Anyways, Crown Sterling, they made this outrageous claim, and it came out that they had paid to be able to speak at DEF CON, so it wasn't like they're on their merit. And I've only twice in my life heard of this. One time I was in a talk at ShmooCon in 2011, and people stood up and were yelling at the presenter. The presenter at ShmooCon was a senator, and they were yelling liar at them, which ShmooCon is a conference that I only went once. It's not my jam. But at DEF CON 2019, Crown Sterling started their talk was how they cracked AES 256, and they were just spewing like techno babble.
Yep.
And people, the math community is strong, Gary. You guys are in the back room with the chalkboard, but you had angry when it happens. People were straight up screaming liars and like, prove this, then, what's going on with that? Like,
I love this one. I love this one. There's this concept called a zero knowledge proof. And you've probably seen this a few times. These people can actually very readily prove that they can do what they say they can do without telling anyone how they do it. And so, for example, if somebody says, hey, I cracked or can crack RSA 2048, all you have to do is go out to, there's this RSA challenge where they have posted a 2048-bit key. And you're like, okay, go crack that. So far, nobody's done it. And it's very easy to verify that they've done it because you just take, here are the two prime numbers that multiplied together make that. You can use Python and just put in those two numbers, multiply them together and check, hey, you did it. I don't know how you did it, but you did it. And so you can get out of this. And you can do the same thing with AES, right? Here's an encrypted stream of AES. I encrypted it. And here's the, I used OpenSSL on my computer and I encrypted my, whatever the secret is. And if you can tell me what the secret is that I encrypted, then I'll believe that you're legit. Otherwise, keep your theory, get off the stage, right?
So, that's like the most polite, like piss off I've ever heard in my life, Gary.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
I love it. All right. Well, as we wrap up, Gary, is there any projects or anything that you'd like people to know about, or how people might want to connect with you to follow the conversation?
Let's do this. I see, there was one or two individuals who are willing to get me back on at some point.
Oh my God, Gary, people want you to have like your own podcast.
I don't need that, but I like your podcast.
Okay, you're a welcome guest always.
Let's do something. Let's do something again.
Okay,
I think this would be fun.
All right, I'll send you the Calendly. We'll bring you on. So, chat, you guys have demanded it. Gary's accepted it, and I facilitate it. So we will have Gary on again to continue the conversation with post-quantum cryptography, post-quantum computers. Who knows, Gary? Like you keep saying, as of right now. So maybe next time you come on, there'll be some breakthrough that we don't even know about.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great. Sounds fun.
All right. I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much for coming today. Solid, outstanding group of people here. We had about 100 consistent throughout the stream. The questions were amazing. You guys asked phenomenal questions. Shout out to Matthew Hibbert for his, he's out on release and back into the ecosystem. Garry Binder, our guest today and friend of the Simply Cyber community. Garry, thank you so very much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We will see you next time, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning for the daily cyber threat briefing. Have a great Thursday evening here in the United States. And until next time, stay secure. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed that content. Keep the cybersecurity train going by connecting with the other Simply Cyber community resources. We have the Discord server that's lively and always keeps the conversation going. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. And also every single weekday morning on the Simply Cyber channel, we're doing live daily cyber threat briefings, 8 a.m. Eastern time, as well as Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We're doing live stream interviews with industry experts, and we produce videos that we push out every Wednesday morning. I'm Jerry from Simply Cyber. I hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you in the next one.